Everyone, this is Whitney Will from Star Hearth Astrology, and I'm here for a little astrology check-in to talk about the current astro weather and the upcoming eclipse, and just to try and have a moment of centering and grounding within this very busy month and time of astro weather. I am definitely feeling in my own life the feeling that I get around eclipses, where time simultaneously seems to speed up and slow down, in the sense that sometimes the insights and the realizations come in very fast, and yet there is this sense of watching things happen. It's almost like things start happening symbolically before they are happening. And there's this thinned veil. Oh my gosh. Double Virgo with Mercury stationing in retrograde. I cannot speak. There is a thinning veil between the mythic path of our lives and the myths we are living, and the kind of day-to-day ho-hum, humdrum sense of things, such that in my own life, I am looking at this eclipse, which happens exactly on my natal moon. Basically, any way you want to interpret that, every way you want to interpret that, it is showing up in my life and in my space, and I am grateful for that. And also, it's a lot. So it's definitely worth checking in with your chart. And a way to do that, you can do that from the direction of looking at your birth chart and looking at the transits. And if you need help with that, reach out to me and we can work together. If you're feeling like there's a lot going on and you need to have a friend or a tutor to help sort it out, I can certainly help with that through readings on my website. Let me know if they are inaccessible due to finances, and we can work something out together. Don't be afraid to reach out to me about that. I am very much here to support the human project of us all doing whatever we can do to participate fully in the gift of this life. So I'm here for it. You can look at it from the point of view of your chart, or you can feel what is going on in your life with absolutely no reference to your chart, and just gathering up all of the pieces of how you are engaged with your community, how you are engaged with your own aggression and frustration and exhaustion and sense of self-efficacy, how you are engaged with your own sense of pleasure, right? And by questioning these and by approaching them with curiosity, the themes arise, because like calls to like, as within, so without. We are in the conversational nature of reality, which means a conversation from the deepest wells of our psyche with questions and curiosities and impulses and tugs that rise up out of our spiritual and body and rise up to meet the world and engage with it. And sometimes our inner experiences are reflected in synchronistic ways, and sometimes they are not. And there's a way in which we are learning how to participate in time from the deep well of the timeless parts of ourselves. And eclipse season is very much a part of that, because eclipse season, maybe a week before the first eclipse to the week after the last eclipse, and most potently the 2 weeks in between eclipses, are these times where we are checking in with this deep, weird story that our rational mind cannot totally compute as to why we feel like things are fated or meant to be, or we need to move in one direction without fully understanding the reasons why the kind of karmic bubble of some relationships is up and needs to go, why some relationships need to die, even if you begin a new relationship with the same person, and why that needs to happen internally, why some versions of us we're ready to let go of. And the eclipses are the portal in and out of those spaces. Here's the cosmic compost heap. I am done with this, let's recycle it. Or, wow, all that stuff that I composted is ready to bring new fertility into my life and really be the foundation of this next journey. We have a bunch of cycles that are at crucial turning points. The Mars retrograde that we're emerging out of is the midpoint of the Mars cycle. So we are dealing with Mars, who is coming into a new position of humility, of tutelage. We go from the kind of brazen, brash warrior Mars in the first half of the Mars cycle, which began in November of 2023 with the Mars-Sun conjunction in Scorpio, culminates with the Mars retrograde and the Sun-Mars opposition. And now we're dealing with Mars that has been through the most intense battles and now comes back as a teacher, as a negotiator, as a mentor with a sense of wisdom from everything that has been experienced. But at the same time, we have Venus and Mercury, whose retrogrades are the beginning of new cycles. And so we have an old crone Venus who is shedding the layers of what she has collected and brought into her life from the cycle that began in July of 2023 with the Venus and Leo retrograde. And so now she is shedding those pieces. She is making meaning. She is feeling gratitude. And she is going back to the heart of the sun to be refreshed and be reborn as the morning star and as the younger Venus. As a Venus who says, I feel pulled in this direction. So if you are experiencing a kind of donia, an inability to find pleasure in anything, in the stuff that you like, right? When we give assessments looking for depression, one of the first questions is, are you still able to find interest and engagement in the stuff that you normally do? When Venus is stationed retrograde, still in her crone phase, where, it would be very natural for the answer to that to be, no, I can't. Because Venus pulls us and connects us, is that little inward tug towards. And when she is at the peak of being an evening star and then moves retrograde, she is saying, maybe I don't need this. Maybe I don't want this. Let's see what happens if we get all of this stuff off. In the same way that when we have collected many things in our home, in our spaces, sometimes that makes it so there's so much happening that we lose our sense of creativity because we can no longer see what is around us, at which point we need more emptiness to create the space for more creativity. And so that's the process that Venus is in, and Mercury too. When Mercury is moving direct, super fast, zooming through things, processing things, we are in autopilot. When Mercury stations and starts moving retrograde, we are in a process of getting to re-examine the systems and the habits in our thinking, in our communicating, in our daily life in such a way that we can reflect on, is this really the right way forward? And because in this cycle, Mercury and Venus are very entwined, And in fact, on Tuesday, March 11th, yesterday, from when I'm recording this video, we had Mercury conjoining a retrograde Venus, right? They are very much considering what is in my value system right now. What values am I living and which ones are influencing that Venusian pull towards and that Mercurial zoom, zoom. And so they're both resetting the cycle of what is of value? What do I feel connected to? And how am I doing with that sense? We have a more mature Mars. We have a Venus and Mercury that are going through the death process. They are in their balsamic phase, or their waning crescent phase with the sun. They are coming back to the sun to be purified in the essence and purpose of self. And in the middle of that, we have eclipses. This eclipse season straddles two different axes. So we have our first Virgo lunar eclipse that happens on Thursday, the 13th, the night of the 13th. Depending on your time zone, the calendar might show that it is the 14th, but if you want to look at the eclipse, which will be visible, it is happening the night of the 13th. So we have our first Virgo eclipse and we have our final Aries eclipse, and I talked about them extensively in my March horoscope video, so I'm not going to go over the Aries one too much because I really want to focus on the Virgo eclipse. And I'm going to bring up the chart and we're going to just dive into it. Okay, so here is the chart of the Virgo eclipse. We see that the sun and the moon are right on the nodes, which is where we have eclipses. The moon is at 2356 Virgo, as the sun is at 2356 of Pisces. The moon's almost exactly on the south node. And the sun is very close, just barely separating from a conjunction with Saturn. The moon is opposite Saturn. We've got this kind of mix of the sun and the north node and Neptune and Saturn and this huge kind of submarine in Pisces under this full moon that is being eclipsed in Virgo. So we can talk about this eclipse being opposite Saturn. Of course, any full moon is opposite the sun. Even though it's an eclipse, it's still very close to the south node, so beautiful. And we can even talk about it being opposite Neptune. And in some ways, this full moon is climbing onto the shores of Virgo. And Virgo is connected at a granular level to what it means to be alive and the work of being alive, the work of taking care of our bodies, of feeding our bodies, of sleeping, of spaces, of how we organize our resources so that we can continue. And the hidden core mystical heart of Virgo is our spiritual experience of faith, whatever it is that we have faith in, that grounds even the tiniest actions, right? Pisces is a more obvious felt sense of connection with the cosmos, with the trees, with everything that is not us. And Virgo is the patterns of how we understand all of those connections. If this eclipse were a person, if I was reading this as a natal chart, we have the moon on the south node. And when we have the moon on the south node, the feminine, nurturing side of us is very well integrated. The moon on the south node, all other things being equal in the chart, does not have erratic behavior and explosive emotions. The moon on the south node is deeply committed in Virgo to setting things right, to taking accountability and responsibility, and doing what it can to heal the world in these micro progressions, right? In the micro. The moon is our body and its connection to the earth. And in Virgo, this is in very practical terms. So this eclipse is checking in on our sense of groundedness and the practice and ritual of everyday life. The moon is our attachment bonds to each other. Can think of the moon in some ways as the wife, not necessarily protector, but the carrier, the accommodator, the tender, the gathering of nurturing, and the kind of queen of the household, right? For everyone. It's gendered language, but I don't mean it in a strictly gendered expression. The moon is the marriage. It is the bond of us and the other, whereas the sun is the self, wholly contained. Virgo is reminding us again of our job as individuals to take our one section of Earth and our individual work and to do that as a spiritual practice and a holy. It's not enough to feel the Piscean, although with the North Node in Pisces, of course, we want to feel the sense of connection. It's not enough just to feel that, but we must also take our portion of that, the Virgoan portion. There is a line in the Cummings poem that begins, "I am a little church, no great cathedral." And it's a beautiful poem for the nodes in this place and for the axis of Virgo and Pisces. And at the end of the poem are the lines, "Accepting proudly, humbly his light and proudly his darkness." In this way, in which accepting our fate, embracing our fate as our role that we play in the world, that is absolutely essential, regardless of when we have the clarity to see that or not, is a life well lived, is a meaningful existence, right? Sometimes we find ourselves in the place of shame, in the place of looking in the mirror and not liking what we see, and having the humility to witness our own shadow without fragmenting and trying to shove it away, but approaching it with curiosity and playfulness and accountability, which we can only do when we have humility, changes everything. Because telling the truth changes everything, and telling the truth of yourself to yourself and accepting that and understanding that it is your work to integrate that is completely transformational. And at the same time, the paradox of that, when we bring in Pisces, is that even though the Virgoan piece points to your work, your specific portion of this, the Pisces piece says, and you are not separate from the whole. The line, "You are not responsible for the whole problem, nor are you free to abandon it," is the perfect expression of these axes, right? You are part of the whole, you are part of Pisces. And what you can do and what you can change and the mastery of the self is Virgo. And that is both for you as an individual and for the collective. That is a tiny little micro piece of time. And as a thread in the tapestry of everything, it has significance in the macro. And holding those two together fosters the kind of humility to bring forward your gifts without pride when they are necessary. Saturn on the sun and on the North Node is bringing things into balance and can help us see how the smallest pieces are part of the whole. Saturn is said to have the opposite nature of the North Node. The North Node has the nature of Jupiter, and the South Node has the nature of Saturn, which is to say the expansiveness versus the constriction. And Saturn on the North Node is, yes, putting a damper on things. I think it would be impossible to talk about this Pisces season and the North Node in Pisces without the weight of grief and despair in looking at the suffering in the world. And I think with this Mars retrograde in Cancer, feeling a sense of helplessness in relation to it. And this Mars in Cancer is in a trine to the sun and in a sextile to the moon. He's involved in this eclipse and is ruled by the moon. And yet it's right. You do not have to finish this project, but you cannot walk away from it. You do not have to heal everything in the world, but you cannot excuse yourself from it wholly. And we will each bring different gifts to the table of how we do this. And some of us will look at each other's gifts and be like, I don't think that person is doing enough. And that Virgo piece reminds us to maintain self-focus. Is your assessment of somebody else not doing enough, not feeling enough, not being compassionate enough, stemming from an insecurity that you are not doing enough? And so when we are taking that kind of critical eye to others, we need to think about how we are using that as a coping method against our own despair and our own feelings of powerlessness or that we're not doing enough internally. Because that Saturn can be the prosaic wet blanket. It can be filled with doubt. And Saturn and the sun in Pisces are like carrying the weight of the world and the wounding of the world and the holy longing of another world being possible. Neptune at the anaretic degree of Pisces, at the very end of the zodiac, is holding that ancient dream. Neptune on the North Node is looking at the breadth of all of this, is looking at the delusion and the falsehood here and longing for that spiritual truth and that feeling of connection and that womb-like embrace of the unity of all things. And yet, the Virgo piece is we are here. We came into bodies. We came in as living fragments of qualitative time to look at each other and to experience the world through the realm of matter, like mother, like the moon. Eternity will wait for us That is the natural state of things. But the immediate sense of what do we do and how do we let ourselves be ourselves so that we can actually move through ourselves, right? When we are in a state of denial about who we are in the world, we are intentionally keeping ourselves stuck. And the gift of astrology is that you can look at your natal chart and see, aha, these are my weaknesses, these are my strengths, these are the potholes. And they'll change their form. Astrology is archetypally predictive. It is not concretely predictive. Your natal chart will be your chart from the beginning until the end, even though you will not stay the same from the beginning until the end. And so it moves through iterations of self. And yet, the nature of archetypes, of the planetary archetypes, of the sign archetypes, is that they can move through form and move through story. So here is a full moon opposite Saturn, confronting doubt and death and the truth of endings and the part of our experience that is always ambivalence and grief. I wake each day not knowing whether to save the world or savor it. It makes it very difficult to plan the day. Full of quotations today. That is the question of this eclipse. Save it, savor it, participate, play a role, bring to the table what you are able to bring. Know that if you are being honest with yourself, it is enough. It is enough. It is enough. And welcome to eclipse season. I wish you a very deep and powerful journey through the eclipse portal into new iterations of self. Be well.